My path to the bench was probably a little bit different because I grew up in a very, very rural part of North Georgia called Blue Ridge, which is in Fannin County, Georgia. When I was a little girl, we didn't even have a McDonald's for a significant portion of my life. There was one red light. So those of you who've been to Blue Ridge recently, it is nothing like it was 30 or 40 years ago when I grew up there. So I grew up working on my family's farm. We had an apple orchard in the mountains, and so I grew up working there from the time that I was frankly, about 8 years old till I went off to school. And the one thing I knew for sure was I did not want to grow apples because I had spent my whole life doing that. And I decided that I was going to go to the University of Georgia because it was kind of a family tradition. And so I went to the University of Georgia. And originally I did not go to Georgia to go to law school. I was thinking I was going to go to med school. But after I got into all the political sciences and histories, I found that my love for that was great, and that I wanted to pursue something in that particular area. And so I ended up deciding to major in political science, minor in English, because my mom was a public school teacher, and she taught AP English in high school, and I really loved a lot of literature, and so I kind of took after my mom in that respect. And so I decided about my second year at the University of Georgia that I wanted to go to law school. When I decided to do that, I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I just knew that I had spent my whole life kind of in the South and never really been anywhere to live outside of the South. And so when I decided to go to law school, I decided to try to see if I could go somewhere different to kind of take me out of my comfort zone of where I had grown up. And I ended up going to law school in New York at Syracuse University College of Law. It was wonderful, but it was horribly cold. So I made a very quick trip back south after that because I couldn't quite handle the cold weather. But I decided that probably for me, being back in my hometown, because that's where my family was from, there were not a lot of lawyers there. I did not go to law school to even be a trial lawyer, but I came back, and that's ultimately what I ended up doing, was becoming a trial lawyer in my hometown, where I did that for about 9 years. In a very small practice in rural Georgia, and I loved it because I went into the courtroom immediately after that, after coming back home, and that's where I stayed for those first 9 years. And then there was a position that came open for the Superior Court in our circuit. It's called the Appalachian Circuit. We have 3 judges, and I put in for that position. I had some really good friends say, maybe you want to try and see if you can get appointed to this, and so I put that application in. And I was selected at that time by Governor Perdue, and I was appointed to be a Superior Court judge. And I stayed in that position for about 6 years before I came to the Georgia Court of Appeals, when I was appointed by Nathan Deal. The best part of my job is that I get to work with people from across the state every day, all day. Whether those are the lawyers that appear before us in the courtroom and we get to interact with them in the courtroom, whether that's judges from other classes of courts, prosecutors, district attorneys, private attorneys, public service attorneys. It's very, very important in the judiciary that you have a clear perspective of where everybody is coming from. And the more that you come into contact with the public and the more transparent you are with the public, we have a better success rate, meaning that we can understand, the problems that each of those different entities face. And so when those come before us, we're bound to follow the law no matter what. And our personal preferences and opinions don't matter, but we can understand where everyone is coming from. And I think that level of compassion and understanding is very important. So the best part of my job is getting to know the folks from across the state that appear before us, because at the end of the day, we serve them. We serve the people of the state of Georgia. We serve our communities, and we are public servants. And in order to be a good public servant, you have to understand the public you serve. So to me, interacting with the public is the best part of my job. While I'm in leadership as the Chief Judge of the Georgia Court of Appeals, I think the most important thing for me is to absolutely at least leave this position as good as I found it, but hopefully better, because quite honestly, nothing makes you feel the weight of the responsibility more than looking back at the chiefs that came before you and the leaders that came before you. I have been extraordinarily blessed to have been on this court with some incredible leaders. When I got to the court, then Chief Sarah Doyle was the chief judge, followed by Judge Dillard, followed by Judge McFadden, and followed by Judge Rickman. And I've gotten to serve with all of them for going on 9 years now. And I will tell you that the work that they have done is awe-inspiring. Each one of them strived every single day to make the court better than it was the day before. But they did that because they learned from everybody that came before them. So for me, my only goal is to leave our court as good as I found it, and hopefully better, so that who comes after me can build on what all of the judges throughout the history have put together. I'm very proud of the work of the Georgia Court of Appeals, and it's a very strong court, partly because we've had such incredible members of our judiciary over the years and such incredible leaders. I'm a big fan of history, so I read a lot of books on history, and those can be biographies, you know, everything. I really enjoy reading about the World War II era. I feel like that's something that my grandparents grew up in the Depression. They grew up in that era. I was very close to them. And I was always trying to understand where they came from, because people who lived through those times, it changed them fundamentally in how they approached the world. And I always wanted to learn from that. So all of my life I've been drawn to trying to understand history, because I think if we don't understand it, we're very likely to make the same mistakes of our past. And so I tend to read a lot of historical, both sometimes fiction, a lot of it fact, a lot of biographies, a lot of autobiographies, too many to list. I watched a really good movie recently, Oppenheimer. You know, just I find them completely intriguing, because there's things that I thought I knew that I didn't know, and the more that I can open my mind and see those things, I think it's helpful.